Hi everyone! For my term project, I decided to delve into the topic of social search, specifically the user's role in the search process in the age of social media. As social search is a pretty broad topic and it's fairly new to the field of IR, I decided to break this down into the 5 W's and how of social search. So I'll be going over what social search is, when it was developed, who controls social search, how it works, where it's used the most, and why it's important to IR and the future of IR. To understand the topic of social search, the first thing that we need to ask ourselves is what social search is. And essentially, social search is placing the user at the center of the information retrieval and search process. This happens through focusing on user-generated content like social media posts, videos, images, news articles, blog posts, anything that a user can create and tag themselves is part of the social search process. In our textbook, Croft, Metzler, and Stroman define this as a community of users actively participating in the search process. And similarly, Ryan defines this as community and users entering data into search results. In the social search process, the ranking of documents is not the same as a traditional search engine. In a traditional search engine, users do not have as much of a voice in saying what is relevant and irrelevant. A computer-generated system will determine based on term frequency or weighting what the most relevant results are. And in this case, users can decide what is more relevant to them or not. Another interpretation of social search involves the connection of users to one another through networks and user profiles. So that is another way that users can receive content through social search. Determining when social search was developed is a little bit more complicated. Though there's no exact date listed for when social search became a term in and of itself, we do know that social search predates both search engines and social media networks. At one point in time, social search was considered when users would link back to content that they felt was relevant that they would need for future use. And additionally, the term people search, as I mentioned in our previous slide, predates the term social search, but is still part of the same concept. At one point, people search was used specifically to search for celebrities or anyone that was famous that users didn't have an exact connection to. Now with social media and the widespread use and access to the internet, there's a lot more connection between users in their current networks and expanded networks, regardless of any geographic barriers, and users can search user profiles and get content from the internet through user profiles specifically. When asking the question of who controls social search, the answer is always going to be the user. Social search is created by and conducted by users taking into account their social networks and the content that they interact with the most in those networks. Mark Scale refers to current users, especially on social networks, as the new era of quasi-librarians. And that is because librarians were typically the ones to facilitate the search process for information, but at this point in time, users are often deferring to searching for things on their own and conducting their own searches and their own discovery process. In a typical search engine, ranking algorithms are created by information professionals where they can determine based on the query as compared to the corpus of documents or content what the most relevant documents are. But in social search, the user has more control in determining what they feel is relevant or irrelevant to them. And they are amateur content creators, so there is room for error, but a lot of users still prefer to do their own searches. One example is LinkedIn and the levels of connection on LinkedIn. When you are using LinkedIn, your first connections, your first degree connections rather, are people that you have connected to directly. And your second degree connections are users connected to your first connections, and third degree is connected to your second degree. But if you are a user interacting with content on your first connections page, you can easily access your second connections and third connections and create a wider network through social search. Our next question is, how does social search work? And these are some of the most common methods that are employed in social search. The first being user tagging. User tagging is often seen on Instagram, and it's where users can employ a descriptor term or a tag or hashtag to the content that they create. Two users may have the same content but describe it in completely different ways. So all items with like tags are grouped together in a corpus. So if another user is to search for a hashtag, they will find all of the documents that are made public with that hashtag together. The next method is community searching, where users can share common interests or likes or interact with one another in a controlled group setting. And this can be passive participation, such as liking or just browsing through, or active participation where users are posting and commenting and sharing information with one another. This is seen a lot in Facebook groups. Our next method is peer-to-peer searching, where users can query a community of nodes or other users to fill an information need. This is seen through Facebook's recommendation service, where users can ask other users in their network for recommendations for things. Lastly is meta search engines, where all nodes in the search engine are links to other search engines. This is seen with websites like kayak.com that compares hotel prices and flight prices, where each link on that page connects you out to a different search engine. Looking at where social search is used the most, social search is most often found on social networking sites because they are hubs for user-generated content. Some of the most popular social networks right now are Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, Reddit, and TikTok, all of which are part of larger parent companies like Meta and Tencent. On these sites, users create their own content and they form communities, they respond to users in forums, and they interact and absorb a lot of content. And because these are part of parent companies, the way that you interact with things on one website may influence the kind of recommendations or things that you receive as recommended profiles or content on other websites. So your behavior on Facebook, for example, can influence the kind of things that you receive in terms of content or friend recommendations on Instagram or Twitter. One example of social search in practice can be the people you may know recommendations on Facebook. For example, if you are friends with a coworker on Instagram and you interact with their posts, you comment, you like things, you message them, you are likely to receive a notification for a people you may know recommendation for that person on Facebook if they also have a Facebook profile because of your interaction with them on the other website under the parent company Meta. Similarly for TikTok, if you are searching for something in Baidu, you might get either a post on your For You page, or you might receive a recommended profile to add on your TikTok because they are both under the parent company of Tencent. There are many benefits to social search, the foremost being that it places power in the hands of users. Users are able to classify their own content and determine what's important to them and what's not important to them without the limitations of a traditional search engine. A traditional search engine employs information professionals and ranking systems and determines what is relevant and irrelevant before a user even gets the opportunity to see the full corpus of documents or content that they are working with. And this places less limitations on the users and gives them the ability to decide for themselves what they would like to see. It also empowers users to reach out to their networks to seek information and to answer their own questions without needing any assistance from an information professional. which allows for more collaborative searching and filtering. However, many information professionals and researchers have pointed out that social search has a number of controversial elements and limitations to it. The first of which being that by nature, social search is an amateur search technique. It lacks professional experience and expertise and guidance in the search process, therefore widening the margin for error. There can be issues with misspellings in tags, incorrect or irrelevant tagging, polysemic words, lack of vocabulary control, a number of issues that can reduce the number of relevant results that are returned to users, therefore decreasing confidence in the social search process. There's no guarantee either of a response by people within your network, especially if it's outside of your immediate network and you're reaching out to users in an extended network or in a community. If a user doesn't respond to your query, you may not receive an answer to your question. Whereas in a search engine, even if it isn't necessarily the response you were looking for, you will definitely receive a result. And lastly, we will consider why social search is important in information retrieval. And regardless of its perceived benefits or drawbacks, social search has revolutionized the way that users approach information retrieval and information seeking in general. It was created and developed due to dissatisfaction with the way that traditional search engines classified and returned results and documents, and this gives users the opportunity to determine what is relevant and irrelevant to them and what they feel is most important about their content that should be shared with other users. Over the past 10 years, the amount of users that have access to the internet and have access to social media networks has grown and will only continue to grow. And with that growth, social search will skyrocket as well, because it allows users to transcend any geographic boundaries or any other physical boundaries that they may have with users and keep them connected with one another in a social network. I wanted to note that much of my analysis of social search was conducted with reference to the article by Mark Shane Scale titled Facebook as a Social Search Engine and the Implication for Libraries in the 21st Century. Thank you all for a great semester, and I hope you have a wonderful summer.